Some people seem to be able to stick to habits almost effortlessly, and others seem to struggle no matter how hard they try.
You're listening to Overwhelmed Working Woman, the podcast that helps you be more calm and more productive by doing less. I'm your host, Michelle Gauthier, a former overwhelmed working woman and current life coach. On this show, we unpack the stress and pressure that today's working woman experiences. And in each episode, you'll get a strategy to bring more calm, ease, and relaxation to your life.
Hi, friend. Today I'm doing a book review of The Four Tendencies. In the book, the author, Gretchen Rubin, explains how understanding the way that you respond to inner and outer expectations, so an expectation you have of yourself versus an expectation that someone else gives you, like a deadline at work or something, when you understand your tendency of how you manage those, it helps you build better habits and improve your own productivity and reduce overwhelm by working with your natural tendencies instead of against them. I'm reviewing this book so that you can learn about this concept at a high level because I think it's super helpful even to understand it conceptually. You'll probably be able to identify what your own tendency is. But when you listen today, you'll learn why people respond differently to expectations, the four personality tendencies that explain why you respond the way that you do, and how knowing yours can reduce frustration and self-judgment. So the goal is not to change what your tendency is, but to maximize your own tendency by using some strategies. So it will be, I think, a very enlightening episode. It helped me understand not only my tendency, but also my partner's tendency, my children's tendencies, and it just makes working with people easier. Today's episode is sponsored by Cozy Earth. I've talked to you guys about the pajamas to die for. I talked to you about the sheets, also to die for. And today I'm going to tell you about my other favorite thing from Cozy Earth, which is their classic cuddle blanket. It's a throw, maybe a little bigger than a throw, but it's super plush. The one that I got is weighted, so it's heavy. I sleep with a weighted blanket every night, so I love a heavy blanket. And it's funny because when mine arrived, my friend Leah was visiting me from out of town, and it couldn't have been a better scene to receive this cuddle blanket. So we're sitting in these two chairs next to my fireplace. We have a fire going. We're just chatting and catching up, and it's freezing cold outside where I live in St. Louis. And we get this package, and it is the cuddle blanket that I ordered. And we open it up, and I handed it to her, and we were in disbelief of how thick and cozy and warm it is. And I said, "You're the guest. You've got to have this first." And so she sat with that cuddle blanket for the whole evening next to my fireplace. I even took a picture. It was so picturesque. It is warm. It is luxurious. It is all of the things that you want to just settle in after a day of, being in the world. And just like everything from Cozy Earth, it has a 10-year warranty because once you feel this level of comfort, you'll want it to last forever. I promise. So if you've been craving a little extra special comfort this winter, wrap yourself or somebody else up in this classic cuddle blanket. You can use my code OWW for Overwhelmed Working Woman for up to 20% off at CozyEarth.com. Okay, so the first important point to understand in order to get an overview of this book is that people respond differently to expectations. We all respond differently to outer expectations, like deadlines and requests from other people. And we all respond differently to inner expectations, like personal goals or habits that we set up for ourselves. Some people easily meet both, some meet one but not the other, and some just naturally resist both. And once you understand this, you'll stop labeling yourself as like lazy or undisciplined or bad at time management or bad at creating habits. I'm going to explain the four tendencies, and I'm going to explain what they are and then give you an example of what this type of person, if this is their tendency, would do if they had the expectation that they needed to start working out 3 times a week. So let's imagine a scenario where their doctor has said, "Hey, you should start working out 3 times a week." Or they themselves have said, "I really want to start working out 3 times a week." There's this expectation that's put out there. The first type is an upholder. Upholders are good at meeting inner and outer expectations. So if they came up with that goal for themselves, or if the doctor told them to do it, they would say, "I said I'm going to work out 3 times a week, so I will." They'll schedule it, they'll show up, they'll follow through, and they'll feel uncomfortable if they don't. So if they skip a workout, they're going to be thinking about it. They'll feel internally unsettled. The second type is a questioner. So a questioner will respond to outer and inner expectations if it makes sense to them. So where an obliger would just be like, okay, yep, I'm going to do that. A questioner might ask, why do I need to work out 3 times a week? Is that the optimal number? They'll research the science behind that. They'll want to know the reasoning. And then if it makes sense, they'll commit. And if it feels random or arbitrary, they won't. So they're not really resisting the workout. They're resisting rules or expectations without logic that doesn't make sense to them. The third type is an obliger. Obligers are very good at meeting other people's expectations and very not good at meeting their own expectations. So this could be a person who is a people pleaser as well. In their case, they might say, well, if my friend is going to the gym and they're expecting me to be there, I'll be there. So if my friend's going 3 times a week and she's expecting me, I'll be there. But if she's just going and trying to start this habit on her own, not knowing anyone, no one else is involved, she would have a harder time doing it. So these people will show up if someone expects them. They'll struggle if it's just for themselves, and they'll cancel on themselves more easily than other tendencies would. The fourth one, which is the last one, is a rebel. Rebels don't like being told what to do, so they resist expectations that are both outer, external expectations and internal expectations. The more they feel forced, the less likely they are to do it. So for example, if someone said, hey, rebel, you need to work out 3 times a week, or even if the rebel told themselves that, if they felt forced or like someone wanted them to do it, they would immediately not want to do it. And they respond better to a choice like, do I feel like moving today? What kind of workout sounds good for today? And not having so much structure around it. So they need autonomy and not structure. So if you think about those and the differences between those 4 things, that's a huge difference if you're considering the people in your family, the people who you work with, you yourself, how you respond to things. If you weren't sure which one of those you are, you can take the quiz, and we'll link it in the show notes, but there's a quiz on the author website. It will give you the result. And then it will also tell you some great tips about whichever tendency you have. Okay, so the third main thing that I took from this book is understand what your tendency is and then know what that means for you so that you can be productive and not feel overwhelmed. Obligers need external accountability. So those are the people who are great at doing things for other people, but not for themselves. If that's you and you're trying to build a new habit, it would be great for you to build in external accountability with someone. Questioners need strong reasoning. So let's just say you have a child who's a questioner, or you yourself who is a questioner. You could, when you're trying to give them an expectation, say, okay, let's talk about it. What kinds of questions do you have about this? And encourage them to ask their questions. And if you know you're a questioner, you can say, okay, I hear what you're asking me to do, but I just need clarification on a couple things. Upholders, this is me, upholders need structure. Upholders are good at meeting internal and external expectations, but they need structure. So it can be hard when something about the internal or the external expectations changes or situations change. You need structure in order to be effective. And when there isn't structure or there are last minute changes, that could be stressful to you. It's just useful to know. And then rebels need choice and they need autonomy. These are people who naturally resist expectations, both internal and external. So if you're working with a person who's a rebel, you may want to just give them choices or ask them how they think you should solve the problem. Because when you try to force yourself or someone else into a tendency that doesn't fit, you just create frustration and overwhelm. Anytime you work with the way that your brain already works, the way that your personality is, it's going to be so much more affected and things will feel easier. If I could just magically make everyone in the world understand themselves and work with who they are instead of trying to change into someone else, I would. I just think it's the most powerful place to work from. So, big picture summary from the 4 tendencies. People respond differently to expectations. There are 4 predictable tendencies: upholder, questioner, obliger, and rebel. And success comes from designing habits and systems that align with your own tendency. This framework is really all about understanding yourself so you can reduce overwhelm and build productivity in a way that actually works for you. That's all for today. Hope you learned a little something and are maybe considering reading this book. I really enjoyed it myself. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Overwhelmed Working Woman podcast. If you want to learn more about my work, head over to my website at michellegothier.com. See you next week.